On a freezing night, a homeless man gave away his only jacket to a woman he thought he'd never see again. He had no idea. She was a millionaire CEO. What she found hidden in his pocket changed both their lives forever. What happens next will leave you speechless, and maybe even in tears. The wind howled down the avenue like a beast in pain, blowing snow into Marcus's eyes as he huddled in the doorway of a shuttered pawn shop. The cardboard beneath him had soaked through hours ago, and the thin hoodie he wore clung to his frame like paper. His hands were all from the cold, his knuckles cracked and bleeding. He had just been turned away from yet another interview, his fourth this week, because we're looking for someone more stable. Stable? What did that even mean anymore? He didn't even have gas money to get to the next town. His truck sat 2 blocks away, dead cold, doubling as both his shelter and his shame. It was where he kept his few belongings and a small, folded crayon drawing, "I love you, Daddy, Ava." A rainbow, a stick figure, and a heart that had become his reason to keep waking up every morning. His daughter. His life before the world collapsed. Marcus had once been an electrician with his own small crew. Then the medical bills came. His wife, Lily, was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease. Insurance covered little. His savings disappeared. So did the jobs. Eventually, so did the house. Lily passed just after Christmas last year. Since then, he was floating, no, drowning, in a world that moved on without him. Across the street, under the bus stop shelter, a woman in a tailored coat was trying and failing to stay warm. She looked entirely out of place, heels sinking into the slush, shivering despite the thick scarf around her neck. Marcus watched her arms fold tighter across her body, noticed the way she wiped at her eyes when she thought no one was looking. She was clearly freezing. He looked down at the threadbare jacket in his lap. It was all he had to keep the cold at bay. He hesitated only a second. Then he stood, walked slowly across the street, and held it out to her. "Take this," he said quietly. "You need it more than I do." The woman blinked at him, startled. "What? No, I couldn't." "Please," Marcus insisted. "I'll be okay." He didn't wait for her answer. He draped the coat over her shoulders, smiled once, and walked back into the snow without another word. She called after him, but he was already gone, vanishing into the night like a ghost. She didn't know his name. But inside the coat pocket, her fingers brushed against something. A crumpled piece of paper. Curious, she pulled it out. It was a child's drawing. A man, a little girl, and the words, "Come home soon, Daddy." Her breath caught in her throat. Jenna sat silently on the bus as it crawled through the icy streets. She clutched the jacket tightly around her, her designer gloves now holding something far more precious than leather or cashmere. That drawing, it didn't just move her. It shook her. For the first time in years, she felt something she'd buried long ago, the ache of being seen, of remembering someone else's pain. She couldn't stop thinking about him, the man who had nothing, offering the only protection he had to a stranger. Most people walked by without even acknowledging others existed. But he'd noticed her. Not her power, not her name, not her expensive bag, just her shivering, human need. And he'd acted. When she got home that night to her spacious penthouse, Jenna didn't pour a glass of wine or sink into her usual silence. She stood by the window, holding that crumpled drawing, and let tears fall freely for the first time in years. Marcus didn't know that the woman he gave his jacket to was the CEO of Cara Blake, one of the most respected real estate investment firms in the city. He didn't know that under her reputation as a polished, unflinching business leader, Jenna had once been a scared, cold girl too, abandoned on the steps of a shelter at age 9, clutching a bag of clothes and a photo of her brother who didn't survive the foster system. He didn't know that a stranger named Mr. Thomas once found her sitting on those steps and gave her his coat before sitting down beside her. He stayed with her all night until someone came. That moment had shaped her life. And tonight, someone had done it again. The next day, Jenna called in a favor from a private investigator. It took less than 24 hours to track Marcus down. He had no criminal record. No addictions. No history of violence. Just a cascade of bad luck, grief, and sacrifice. She found him parked near an abandoned lot, sleeping in his truck, curled under a blanket of old clothes. The jacket he gave her? He hadn't replaced it. He had nothing left. She didn't approach him immediately. She watched for a moment from a distance, seeing him stretch, wincing from the cold, rubbing life back into his fingers. Then he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out that same drawing. He kissed it lightly, folded it, and tucked it against his chest. That was enough for her. Jenna waited until late afternoon to approach. She dressed down, no heels, no tailored coat, just jeans, boots, and an old sweater. She didn't want to startle him. She walked across the lot slowly, careful not to look like a threat. Marcus saw her coming and sat up straighter, wary. His face was gaunt, tired, but alert. He wasn't used to being approached by strangers, especially not ones like her. "You again," he said, his voice gravelly. "Didn't expect to see that coat again." Jenna smiled faintly. "Didn't expect to need it that night either. But I owe you." Marcus shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. You looked cold. That was it." She hesitated, then held up the drawing. "Is this your daughter's?" The color drained slightly from his face. His eyes dropped to the ground. "Yeah," he said after a beat. "Her name's Ava. She's 7. Staying with her aunt for now. I'm trying to get back on my feet." But he let the rest hang in the air like a frozen breath. "I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it. "I want to help." He laughed, short and bitter. "Help? Lady, I've had enough pity to last me a lifetime." "It's not pity," she said firmly. "It's recognition." He frowned. "You reminded me of someone. Someone who changed my life a long time ago. He gave me a coat when I had nothing. Sat with me all night in front of a shelter when I was a kid. That coat meant more than warmth, it meant someone saw me. Like you did." Marcus said nothing, unsure how to respond. "I run a company," she continued, voice steady. "I don't need another analyst or manager. I need someone like you. Someone who knows what people go through. Someone who understands what it's like to hurt, and still choose kindness." He stared at her like she was speaking another language. "What kind of job are you offering?" "A position I created this morning," she said. "It's called Human Values Advisor. You'd sit in on meetings. Give perspective. Be a compass. Help us remember what matters." He blinked, his mouth twitching. "I'm not qualified for that." "You are," she said without missing a beat. "More than anyone I know." Marcus looked away, jaw clenched. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's a choice. And if it helps, come with me somewhere first. Let me show you why I'm doing this." He hesitated, then nodded once. They drove in silence to the edge of town. Jenna pulled up in front of a large brick building with a sign out front, "Thomas's Place, Shelter, Counseling, Dignity." Kids played in the snowy yard outside. Volunteers unloaded crates of winter coats and hot meals. Jenna parked and got out, waiting for Marcus. "This place exists because of one man's coat. I built it in his honor. Now hundreds of people get warmth, food, hope, because he didn't walk past a scared girl one night." Marcus stepped out slowly, looking up at the sign. "You could turn away," she said. "Or you could change more lives than you'll ever know." The silence between them stretched as Marcus stood in front of the shelter, the name Thomas's Place etched into the stone like a quiet promise. He watched a volunteer kneel to zip a little boy's coat, a woman pour soup into a styrofoam cup, and a teenage girl giggle as she wrapped mismatched scarves around a younger sibling. Something cracked open inside him. He cleared his throat. "So, you really built this whole place because of one man?" Jenna nodded. "He didn't give me a lecture. He didn't try to fix my life. He just stayed. Made me feel human when I felt invisible. It changed everything. I built this so no one else would have to feel that alone again." Marcus blinked hard. That's a hell of a way to say thank you." She smiled. "And you did the same thing. For me. When you gave me that coat, you weren't thinking about return or reward. You just saw someone who needed help." Marcus ran a hand through his unwashed hair. "I'm not used to being the one people see." Jenna looked at him softly. "Well, I do. And so will others, if you let them." He didn't say yes right away. He needed time. But 2 days later, he showed up at the Carol Blake office lobby wearing borrowed clothes from the shelter donation box and holding Ava's drawing in one hand. The receptionist didn't know what to make of him, until Jenna came out herself, smiled, and let him in. His first few weeks were awkward. He didn't know where to sit, what to say, or how to act in a place where everyone wore suits and spoke in buzzwords. But slowly, things began to shift. People noticed that Marcus listened, really listened. When an intern cried in the break room, it was Marcus who sat with her. When a delivery man was yelled at for being late, Marcus offered him a sandwich. When employees snapped at each other, Marcus gently reminded them that sometimes pain comes disguised as anger. Jenna watched it all unfold. He didn't speak often in meetings, but when he did, people stopped and paid attention. One day, a project manager said, "I didn't realize how much we needed someone like Marcus here. Until he reminded me how burned out I was." Jenna just smiled. Over time, Marcus stopped sleeping in his truck. Jenna arranged a modest apartment through the company's transitional housing stipend. When he saw the bed, the heater, and a real fridge, Marcus stood in the doorway for 10 full minutes before saying a word. The next day, he called Ava. He cried afterward, quietly, sitting on the floor next to the drawing that had never left his jacket pocket. Weeks turned into months. Ava visited on weekends, bringing stories of school and new drawings for his wall. Marcus began smiling more, walking taller. The office staff started greeting him not as a guest, but as one of them. And Jenna. She found herself sitting beside him more often. Their conversations deepened. Laughter became easier. Grief turned to understanding, and that understanding to something neither of them had expected. It started with shared coffee breaks and late-night conversations in the office lounge when everyone else had gone home. Jenna found herself drawn to the quiet steadiness in Marcus, the way he didn't try to impress anyone, the way he saw people, not titles, not roles, just people. And Marcus, after years of isolation and barely surviving, began to feel something stir again. Not just gratitude or hope, but something far scarier, belonging. One chilly evening, Jenna invited Marcus to speak at an internal company event, a small gathering where employees shared personal turning points in their lives. He hesitated, of course. Public speaking wasn't something he was used to. But when he took the stage, holding Ava's drawing in one hand and his old, weathered jacket in the other, the room went silent. He told them about Lily. About the jobs that vanished. About the nights in the truck. But most of all, he talked about that moment, when he saw a stranger shivering under a bus shelter and gave her the only warmth he had left. "I thought I was invisible," he said. "But that night, giving away the last thing I owned didn't make me less. It reminded me I was still human." People wiped their eyes. Some stood in quiet applause. Jenna stood too, her hands trembling. After that night, the idea for a new company tradition was born. They called it One Kindness Day. A day where every employee performed one selfless act, no strings attached. The office filled with stories, of groceries delivered to a struggling family, an elderly neighbor's driveway cleared of snow, a teenager's bus fare quietly paid. On the first official One Kindness Day, Jenna called everyone into the central atrium. A small display stood under a spotlight. Inside a glass frame was Marcus's jacket, the very one he had handed her that winter night. "This," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "is what changed everything. A single act of compassion. No grand gesture, no publicity. Just warmth. Offered freely." She looked at Marcus then, her eyes shining. "This jacket is now a part of our story. A reminder that what we do for one person can ripple farther than we ever imagine." People clapped. A few cried. Later that evening, after most had left and the atrium lights dimmed, Marcus approached her, holding something small in his hand. Jenna turned, surprised by the seriousness in his eyes. "I've been carrying this around for weeks," he said softly. "Wasn't sure when the right time would be." She looked down. It was a simple ring, nestled in a soft cloth. A tiny chip of green stone in the center. "I found it years ago," he said. "Bought it at a pawn shop when Lily first got sick. Told myself I'd propose again once we beat it. I kept it in the same coat pocket. Couldn't ever let it go. Her breath caught. "I never thought I'd find love again," he continued. "But you made me feel alive again. Whole. Like I have something to give. And if there's anything more valuable than that coat, it's you." Jenna didn't speak. She just nodded, eyes brimming, and whispered, "Yes." They didn't want a big ceremony. No luxury venue or spotlight. They chose Thomas's place. The wedding was quiet, but nothing about it felt small. The community center buzzed with warmth as friends, co-workers, volunteers, and even some of the people Marcus had helped during his hardest months filled the space. Folding chairs were decorated with hand-drawn signs made by kids from the shelter. Ava walked down the aisle holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, beaming with pride. Jenna wore a simple white dress with a silver shawl, the same shade as the old jacket that started everything. Marcus wore a suit donated by one of the company's board members, a little too big in the shoulders but perfect in every other way. He stood tall beside her, one hand over his heart, the other clutching Ava's drawing folded neatly in his pocket. As they exchanged vows under the soft glow of string lights and snow falling gently outside, Jenna said, "Once, you gave me your coat. That night, you gave me warmth when I had everything but was still cold inside. Tonight, I give you my whole life." Marcus smiled, and when it was his turn, he said simply, "I used to think I had nothing left to offer. But you saw me, and you didn't look away. You made me believe again. I promise to love you the way you taught me love should feel, quiet, steady, and full of kindness." The guests stood in applause. Ava ran to them, wrapping her arms around both, and in that moment, the three of them felt like the world had finally settled into place. Photos were taken, one in particular that would later go viral online without them meaning it to. In it, Marcus and Jenna stood under the Thomas's Place sign, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and in the background, mounted on the wall in a glass frame, was the jacket. Frayed, threadbare, yet more powerful than any speech ever given. The photo would be shared thousands of times, with captions like, "The jacket that rewrote a man's life," and "One act of kindness. One forever." Ava, still too young to grasp the full weight of what had happened, began calling Jenna Mom without prompting. It made Marcus cry every time. Back at the company, a plaque was installed below the framed jacket, "Kindness doesn't require wealth, just heart." This coat warmed more than a stranger, it warmed a legacy. Marcus's job title eventually changed too, from Human Values Advisor to Director of Compassion Culture, a title that fit him like a second skin. He spent his days mentoring new hires, helping burned-out employees rediscover purpose, and working with Jenna to expand One Kindness Day into other companies and cities. Together, they opened 3 more centers like Thomas's Place in the following 2 years. At night, they cooked dinner as a family. Ava would tape new drawings to the fridge. Marcus would hold Jenna close, often whispering, "Still feels like a dream." She would reply, "That's how you know it's real." And as the seasons changed and time went on, the story of the jacket, of the homeless man who gave everything for nothing in return, continued to inspire others across the world. People began leaving coats at shelters with notes, in honor of Marcus. What had started with one quiet act in the cold became a movement. A reminder that kindness isn't a grand gesture, it's a hand extended when no one else is watching. It's warmth offered in the middle of a storm. And sometimes, it's a threadbare coat wrapped around a stranger who ends up changing your life forever. One selfless act in the cold sparked a wave of kindness that changed lives, rebuilt a broken family, and proved that love can grow even from heartbreak. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You never know who might need this message today. This is Heartfelt Tales TV, where real emotions meet unforgettable stories. See you in the next one.